Thank you very much, Peter. Welcome everyone on this Monday afternoon. The time goes so quick. I can't believe next week is into next week. We're heading on into Christmas time. I'll just put in the presentation mode. All right, can you say that one, Peter?
I can. Thank you.
Very good. Oh, I should actually mention. So I'm sitting in Launceston, and surprise, surprise for anyone who's not in Tasmania, we've got 3 days of 30 degrees, 3 days in a row. So absolutely amazed by that. All right, so I'll be involved in the supply chain and logistics specialisation of the advanced practice. Although we're saying today's a masterclass, well, it's not really, because really what I'm doing is I'm introducing you to some of the things that you might find out. So I'm not a health professional. I'm someone who is very passionate about supply chain and logistics and how we can apply that into different industries. I do have a current PhD candidate who is looking at the use of artificial intelligence in helping procurement decisions in the healthcare industry. So that's been quite good. She's just finished her data collection, so we're looking forward to getting that analysis done. So the units we have in the Australian Maritime College are ones that can apply across a whole range of industries. There may be some of those units that you'll be able to apply directly into with the assignments, directly into your organisation, because we do like to encourage that. So to start off with the basics, now what is logistics? What is supply chain? And I've asked lots of different people that all tell me something different. Some people will just say, "Oh, this is about forklifts and about warehouses and people with hard hats." Well, it's actually a lot more than that. It's a professional role that really is global in its nature and has huge impacts. And I'm sure all of you felt the impact of supply chains not working very well during COVID. When you go into various shops and places like Bunnings or even supermarkets, etc., and you wouldn't have your products there available to you. And it's normally at that time, and one of the few times, that supply chains and logistics actually becomes visible to people, because it's something we don't normally think about, because normally it works pretty well. So the way most people think about logistics, and even in some of your businesses, it's just about, I need to buy something, I'm going to click a button somewhere and I'm going to purchase it. I might talk to someone and all of a sudden this product arrives in my business, at my home, and it arrived fairly quickly. What sits behind that, of course, is a whole big infrastructure, including some of these modes of transport that you can see. Of course, at the Maritime College, be remiss of me not to mention ships, and over 90% of the world's trade, all carried by ships, and some pretty large ships. So if you look at on the right-hand side there of the 400-metre long ship, now you don't realise that if you live in Melbourne, for example, most of the ships there that you see in Melbourne Port are higher than the skyscrapers there in Melbourne. Now these are big, 20,000 plus containers, up to about 24,000, all carrying products, all carrying raw materials that make the products that we all need. So part of in doing the logistics and supply chain specialisation, part of it is help you to realise why things don't happen as planned, and also who to contact, and also what can you do about it? What other options are there? But another part of it is from a logistics company perspective, what they're attempting to do, and then as a customer, what it is that you require and how to integrate those logistics and supply chain principles in with your organization's business. So it's all nice, it flows well. And that's why we start talking about different types of technologies that can be used to merge in with your own business software. So to create a much easier understanding of supply and demand, so that products arrive in your organization when you need them. And if you had been thinking about what is logistics, well, here's just one of those word clouds. And hopefully a lot of these different words there would become familiar to you. Now we've got the procurement aspect of how we do the purchasing and all the relationships that has to happen in with that. Of course, cargo, transportation, delivery, the service, all those parts all come with it. And then there's probably the areas that people are less familiar with in terms of the seaport terminals, what all the different types of transportation modes that are being used, and what happens in these huge storage facilities and warehouses, and what sort of people work in the industry and what they actually do. So it's a much bigger industry than what people really realize. So to try to put in context, because people often mix up what is logistics and what is supply chain management. So I like this little diagram here. So what supply chain management is, it's the overarching strategy. So it's combining all those other little boxes there together. And what we're trying to do is get a product from the manufacturer or from the grower, for example, or the developer, right the way through to whoever the customer may be. And there's a whole range of processes that needs to go through. And if I'm a supply chain manager, I want to make sure that my customers will keep on wanting to have me managing their supply chain for them or be part of their supply chain. So really it is about that competitive advantage. What is it that we can do to reduce costs? What can we do to satisfy our customers and make sure that issues such as reliability and delivery on time all work? So as you'll see, one of those boxes is the logistics and distribution. And this is just about that forward and also the reverse flow of products. And we do have reverse flow. Those of you involved in the medical area would know very, very clearly about some of the different medicines that are recalled from time to time. And if you could think about that from a logistics operator's perspective, that is a huge task. All those different products that have to be recalled are out amongst all the various hospitals, aged care facilities. They might be out amongst all the pharmacies, maybe even in supermarkets, and they all have to be gathered back up and put back through that whole supply chain, and all those costs absorbed somehow along the line. So that's why it is about this efficiency aspect of it, and how do we do the forward and the reverse flow and get the storage of the goods. Because sometimes we need to get a certain amount of raw materials together at the same time to be able to make the product that's required, but we can't get them all to the same place at the same time. So therefore, that's where the storage in the warehouses and other places needs to occur. So as you'll see there on that definition, it's about going from the point of origin out to the point of consumption. And the way that can be done is in so many ways, and that's what we explore during the various supply chain and logistics units. So it's all about the customer, and you guys are the ones who are normally the customers. And so some of this here hopefully then will resonate with you when you think about when things don't happen and don't occur in the manner that you wish. So why should we understand this? Why is it so important if these things just happen? Because by going through our specialisation, what you'll start to understand is why the products don't arrive on time. So that means that we have to have a look at all this from a macro, a meso, and a micro level. So we do have a look at what's happening on a global perspective, and I'll show you a couple of examples of that, because that then cascades down right the way through to that micro level of our products did not arrive at our health facility when we required them to. But if we start to become a bit more aware of this, then what we can do, we can start to keep a watch on world events. And if we've got critical products that we need, and I'm sure in your industry there are many of those, you can then start to anticipate what you need to do to prepare or to keep backlog of enough stock. Another important part through this specialisation is about that relationship with the suppliers. And sometimes it's the suppliers' suppliers. So the tier one, what we call tier one and tier two suppliers that we need to have a relationship. Because sometimes now we don't need to work with our suppliers. We can jump over them to the suppliers and cut out one of those intermediaries. And I remember some years ago, Joe Hockey, one of the finance ministers, he came up with this term, or he mentioned this term called disintermediation will happen in the future. And a lot of the journalists laughed at him about this made up word, but it certainly wasn't. What he was talking about is along a supply chain, with the growth of technology and systems and processes, we can actually start to remove the need for some of those providers along the supply chain, and therefore make our products cheaper. Managing our relationships with suppliers is also knowing the importance of why we need to keep a range of suppliers available to us at different times, depending on how critical it is that that product arrives on time. We could also start to make decisions about our product delivery modes. So now, and I'll put this in a supermarket perspective, I think it's Coles or Woolworths, I think it might be Coles, up in Queensland, in Brisbane. This year, they've just had trials of using drones to deliver products to people's houses. So the amount of the product can only be between 1 and 2 kilos. And what they're saying is things like medications. So it could be that someone's at home, they've run out of certain medications like Panadol or so they can purchase from the supermarket, and that delivery can all occur for them. So there's new forms of delivery that are now being looked at, things that will make it much more efficient for us, and also potentially cheaper. I've already mentioned the reverse logistics, but also we look at the amount of tampering and counterfeit products there are. And certainly in medications, there are a number of counterfeit products that are there on the market. So we talk about using technologies such as blockchain, and I'll come back to that as well, where we can keep a much better check on this origin and destination and what happens in between, to make sure that we're getting the right products that we've ordered, not the counterfeited products. And also we look at the packaging to make sure that tampering is made even more difficult. By understanding logistics and supply chain, we can start to look at how we can save our costs by seeing what sort of changes we might need. And I'll just jump to the bottom point there about the ability to question our business decisions and also provide input into those. Because now from whichever lens that you look through your business at, through this specialisation, you'll be able to think much broader about what is coming in and going out of your particular facility or business. And that's what we want, because we want that reliability of supply, and we want to make sure that delivery occurs when we need to. Because if we do that, the impacts on our business, and in particular the impact on our patients and our clients, is then reduced. Just that third point from the bottom, the sustainable, socially responsible, secure supply chains. This is something just in the last couple of years is becoming much more critical. So a lot of businesses now are being asked, even by banks, to show how they are being socially responsible in sourcing the products through their supply chain. So even banks are starting to say if this is small to medium enterprises right the way up to large companies, how confident are you that the products you're purchasing aren't made by modern slavery? And that's a difficult question for some people to ask. And it's not one they normally look at. But this is about being sustainable and also being socially responsible, and making sure our supply chains aren't able to be hacked with any cybersecurity issues or intervened with. Which is why the use of technology plays a big part in each of the units that we offer. So if you think about a very basic healthcare supply chain, and those of you who know a bit more about this, you'll look at this and go, look, there's so many bits missing from it. But even at this level, there's complexity, and that's where you'll see the backwards and forwards lines, those dotted lines. Now that's about all the communication and discussions and relationship building that has to go on between all of these different organisations. Because as you'll see on the right-hand side, there are a whole host of organisations, health-related organisations, that require those products from the producers and the distribution centres. And how do you make sure that you get the amount that you require, particularly when there have been disruptions among the supply chain? And of course, what a lot of you would know is between those various facilities on the right-hand side, there's a lot of interaction between them. So the arrows are going upwards and downwards as well between all of those, as these products and different information has to flow between them, so we can figure out how much we need to order back through that whole supply chain. And this can be made a bit more complicated when we think about some of the stakeholders. And this is just in the hospital supply chain. And you can look through these here, and the insurance companies, not just the health insurance, but also the transport insurance companies. They want to know if something doesn't arrive on time, or if the products that has been ordered needs to be kept at a certain temperature. If something goes wrong, they want to know whose fault that is. And that's why we can use technology to understand that. But when you start to put all of those stakeholders together, all requiring certain products and all becoming reliant on each other and all needing to communicate with each other, this whole supply chain starts, the complexity starts to roll out. Now, who are the third-party transport providers that we might have to use? Who is it that we can call on when something goes wrong? That's what we need to know and understand. And this is because supply chains are changing. You'll see that linear view, which is a little bit like what I was showing quite earlier. It starts from the suppliers, goes through the manufacturers, distributors, ends up at the customer. There somewhere along the line. But nowadays, a lot of these manufacturers and suppliers and distributors and so on, they're actually involved in multiple supply chains. So you're not the only customer anymore. And in fact, there may be many, many bigger customers than you. So how do you keep that relationship firm and very effective with those with those people down the supply chain? So it's a complexity of information. It's a complex system. Sorry, that is then there that we need to have a better understanding of. So I'm just going to hit you up here with just a couple of the different major activities, just to give a bit of a taste. So procurement. We all have to do it. We all have to get our products from somewhere. We all have to figure out how to do it through our 4 units in our specialisation. There is one of them is a procurement unit that looks very much at that integrated supply strategies. So we look at what is it the organisation's goals and objectives are. We look at how much are they willing to hold themselves in their own storage. Do we need to have other warehouses in place as that overflow? Can we rely on other businesses in the supply chain? For example, some of those other stakeholders that we were looking at in the other slides. The goals of our procurement needs to also be aligned within our own business. So with accounting, with our operation staff, with our customer service staff, because they're all having to deal with what happens if we don't have enough of the products or the right products on hand. In terms of procurement, we're also trying to ensure we've got the continuous supply, or have recognised where there's peak demands, and we can say, right, this is when we need those orders to change, which then links into that how much we want to actually invest into our inventory. We've also got the performance management, the quality improvement, and of course the technology and innovation. And that example I was saying about our PhD candidate, she's looking at that. How can AI be used to help us choose the different suppliers, but how can we also share data with them so that they know when we need certain products? So things are moving away over these coming years. They'll move away from this just in time, where you will get it. You will always get it in time, because the sharing of the data platforms will help to be able to manage that. You won't need to put your orders in. Customer service, big part of logistics and supply chain, because customers do have high expectations, and it's all these rights they need to have: the right amount, the right product at the right time, the right place, the right condition. Very important for you guys. Right price with all the right information. So to make all that work properly is a huge task, because there are so many people having an input and touching that product right the way through the supply chain. So it's managing all of that: efficiency, effectiveness. And from a logistics perspective, this is what we want. We strive for that perfect order. We know it's complete, it's there, it's reached you, and zero defects. And zero defects are a lot harder than what we realize to ensure they happen. Because with some of these products, there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of them being produced and shipped out all over the world. And some of the products that we think are just manufactured next door, no, in a neighboring state, so many products come from overseas. And therefore, there's even more things can go wrong with them. Now, this is what you get exposed to, this invisible world. This is very much at that macro level, the understanding of the supply and demand, where the different raw material suppliers are, all the various retail outlets and warehouses and distribution centres, the various forms of transport that work through, and how we utilise technology through all that process. So this is just, like I said, from the macro level, you get to have an understanding of why things happen the way they do, why things are a bit more simpler than what we might have imagined. And this is because of things like disruptions occur. And technology is one of those disruptions, where we see that we've got changes in computer power, the internet, data is getting cheaper, so we can start using sensors to monitor and track all these different products we've got going all over the world. And that can help us be much more accurate. And the data is becoming much more accessible. But what those changes really have resulted in is we just expect now real-time everything. We order, we get it. We don't have to wait. So that's why the speed of orders, delivery, or turn up the next day perhaps. So managing expectations becomes really quite important. We're also getting used to customizing and personalizing different products for the needs of ourselves and for our clients. And we are expecting more, because of technology, that there should be zero defects and a product should arrive damage-free. But also we should be able to track it. That's where the transparency and visibility come in. We want to be able to see, if I've made that order, and if I've been told it won't arrive tomorrow, I want to know where it is all the time. It's almost like watching a computer game. And of course, as things have become, as more and more technology, we're also expecting those much lower costs. So from a business environment, this then washes through from what's happening in the supply chain right the way through to your own patients, to your own clients. And that's why one of these technologies that have come through to try to improve supply chains and this connectivity and the transparency is a blockchain, which primarily was used to track the transactions and to put in place smart contracts, so that as soon as a product reaches its destination, that particular person in the supply chain would then be paid automatically. But it's also become useful for identifying counterfeit products from that pharmacy perspective. We can also make sure that we know that the product has come from where it's supposed to come from. And once again, that part about the counterfeiting and the and the tampering comes into it. And through the Internet of Things and the sensor technology, we can ensure that if a product has had to keep a certain temperature all the way through the supply chain, the sensors that we have on those boxes or the containers or the pallets can then verify that for us. And I love this one here. I've just got it because I'm from the Maritime College. I have to show you this one. So when we talk about disruptions, this is something that happened in 2021. So on the top left-hand side, you'll see where the Suez Canal is, if you're not very familiar with it. And below that, you'll see what the Suez Canal looks like. Well, here's a ship. This is a 20,000 container ship went sideways in the canal, 2021. Now, just to put that in perspective of size, you'll see below that the little dark shapes, the white shapes on the dark background. That's houses and factories. So you can see the size of that 400-meter ship going sideways. What ended up happening was there was 400 vessels, all had to be turned around and sent in different directions. All that product, over $10 billion of trade per day, were things that we all needed, that we didn't get. And some of those 400 ships then had to go around the bottom of Africa to find their way over into Asia and then into Australia. That's the sort of disruptions that can occur, and that was an unknown disruption. No one expected that would ever occur. But there's plenty of other disruptions that we talk about when we discuss logistics and supply chains. Typhoons, the natural disasters, of course, industrial relations strikes, terrorists, piracy, ships sink, the pandemic that we all had to work through, the geopolitical tensions that we're seeing now that's making some of the products we want to buy increase. And of interest from a healthcare perspective, through the pandemic, that's when the Australian government and other governments started to realise how reliant we are on overseas markets for a lot of the medications that we require here in Australia. And in times of pandemics, in times of geopolitical tensions, there can be a lot of pressure put on other countries, onto Australia, by not providing us with some of those things that we need. Hence, we're starting to hear about reshoring or onshoring and getting more manufacturing here in Australia. We're starting to see more about robotics and cobots. So the cobots are the collaborative robots that people end up working with, and there's certainly been a number of examples I've seen raised about how that could be occurring in hospitals. Artificial intelligence, autonomous everything, drones, autonomous fuels. There are so many emerging technologies, all that are going to impact on our supply chains, either slowing them down because of disruptions or speeding them up because of these new technologies. So when I think about the future, from a logistics supply chain perspective, sensors are going to be everywhere. Augmented reality is going to be used, and healthcare is not going to be exempt from that. There'll be so many opportunities for there. Data, and more data. Drones, shared platforms between different organisations, just to help manage that supply and demand and understand it, so we can all react quicker to what each other's needs are. That's from a technology perspective, but also from a business perspective. The sustainability, social responsibility is going to become more and more focus in supply chains on that. And the focus on all tiers, that's all the different tiers of suppliers, going back along the supply chain and also forward through the supply chain. We may also have some impacts on reverse globalization, where greater manufacturing is done onshore. And of course, there's AI, and the impact of AI on logistics and supply chains is just going to be absolutely amazing and somewhat scary. So just a few last slides on the supply chain logistics specialisation. 4 units, business logistics and supply chain management. You would have guessed they'd be there to give you that overview. So an overview of what is supply chains and how they work and how you can manage them. and then a bit more detail on the activities that we go through the business logistics unit, then the strategic procurement management to help get that focus on the suppliers and how we manage those relationships, and then another one on warehousing and inventory and all the technology that can be wrapped up with that to make it easier for us to identify what have we got on demand. The formats that we normally run here at AMC through these units is a workshop style. That's some of our students there working in groups on certain problems. We have workshop activities normally based on the previous week's work if you're doing it on campus. Class, we have activities at the class level, the group level, and also the individual level with a real focus on applied learning. That's one thing to know the concepts, but can you apply this into a certain condition example that we provide, or into your own workplace? And if you're looking at doing these units with us, you've got the choice of doing them on campus, online distance learning, or you can do it online distance, but if you happen to be in Launceston, feel free to call into any of the on-campus classes. And of course, like most people, the on-campus discussions in classes are all recorded, so you can look at it at a time convenient to you. So you don't need to join the online class. You can just watch it afterwards. We have the Milo resources. Some of you may already be familiar with that, but that's where all of our unit outline that gives all the details about how the unit operates exists. All the discussion forums and announcements, and all the assessments. And of course, this is where you drop off all of your assignments and then receive your marks and feedback back through this Milo system. So it does become a useful process to help manage the unit. All the readings are available on here as is the study guide materials. There's just a typical look at one of our units, the business logistics. I've color coded just to clump different things together. So you see the 1, 2, 3 is more the introductory parts and how logistics fits within the strategy of an organization, the finance aspect, the people side of it, and then looking at down further the supply chain, and then the demand from the customer perspective, and then all about the storage, transportation, and then we finish off with those managerial issues, because it is a postgrad unit, and also about the contemporary issues that always seem to keep on changing. Each of our units have the intended learning outcomes, so it's very clear on what we're looking at, whether it's concepts, strategic contribution, application of approaches, and then all of that is tested out and assessed through. Here's a typical assessment scheme. This is one that I used this year: online quiz, case studies, assignments, and then your take-home exam. So the assignments are normally around about 2,000 words or so, and the exam is normally around about that 2,500 words also. So that's a typical one. Varies a little bit unit to unit, but more or less similar to that. All right, so Peter, that's me done. I'm happy to take any questions that people might have.
Thank you very much, Stephen. That's a fantastic presentation.